Hello, everyone. Welcome to what will be the third interview of the MyFootballMind interviews. Today, I am joined with Jason. Hi, Jason. How are you?
How's it going, George?
Good, man. I'm good. Thank you for being a part of these interviews. So we'll kind of get into more about what Jason does later on in the interview. But first off, Jason, how about you just kind of introduce yourself and what you do to the people watching?
Yeah, bit of a generalist, so I couldn't really put a pin on what I do. But I'm kind of involved in boutique fitness businesses, sports businesses. I guess I'm a bit of a boutique fitness consultant, if you want to coin me that. I'm a former professional footballer as well. I played for Man Utd and Aston Villa, coming through the academy systems there. Unfortunately, a week before my 18th birthday, I did have a really bad injury, which kind of defined the direction of my career. And then I ended up going to the United States on a soccer scholarship. So I went to New York, Long Island University. I spent 5 years there. And then after that wonderful 5 years, I went to work in New York City for a year for a company called Barry's Boot Camp. And that's really where my career developed in the boutique fitness industry. I'm also a co-founder of something called MyFootballMind, and we're trying to build the next generation of Brazilian footballers. So that's I think where we have our similarities and what this conversation is going to be mostly about. And we both feel very passionate about kind of helping people develop their mental attributes through sport.
Yes, definitely. I didn't know you'd I didn't realize you'd worked in New York. That's really cool.
Yeah.
But yeah, so the kind of how we got to know each other was through Ed Bowers.
Yeah.
And if you guys don't know about Ed, definitely check out his podcast. I forget his name right now. What's it called again? The Education to Sport. Education to Sport. Yeah. That's the one. Yeah, definitely check out Ed Bowers' podcast, Education to Sport. So yeah, we kind of got in touch through Ed, and well, he got me in touch with you, and we got speaking about MyFootballMind, which is kind of this new startup you've been running. So you kind of introduced it there a little bit, talking about the fact you're working with footballers. But could you go into a little bit more detail about kind of the mission of MyFootballMind, I guess?
Well, the vision is that we're going to help create the next generation of Brazilian footballers. That's what we'd like to do. Now, obviously, that's easier said than done, and it's something people have tried to do already. So we realized kind of there's a lot of work to be done. Right now, we're more kind of a signpost. So we're connecting our community with useful resources that are currently out there already. As you rightly just kind of said there, we are more or less a bit of a startup. So we are flexible in the sense that we don't have a defined direction, which is helpful. Like we're not exactly the resource for the parents, specifically the players or agents or anything like that. So we kind of encapsulate the whole soccer sphere, if you like, but obviously with that focus on building better mental health. We all, the three co-founders, all have different levels of experience with football, but we all have experience with mental health. So obviously myself, coming through the academy systems and suffering this bad injury, that's where my story comes in. I did have a pretty rough time, obviously, as you can imagine, being on the cusp of realizing that professional dream, only to have it kind of blown up and left in tatters when I tore my ACL, MCL, and both medial and lateral menisci. So that's where I come into it. We have Cezanne as well, whose son actually just signed scholarship forms with Chelsea. So he's going into their under 18s this year. We'll have to see what happens with coronavirus and all that, of course, but that's the plan. So he's doing very well. Cezanne's also an RCT therapist, so she's got a wealth of knowledge in mental health. And last but not least, we've got Rosie as well, who has been working with charities, I think the majority of her career. And she has another charity called Ball Boys, which is kind of promoting interest and kind of information about testicular cancer and things like that, and getting guys to check themselves.
That's really cool. So yes, you cover, the three of you cover a lot of different areas that you can definitely draw on and create this. Yeah, I like that you're saying, because I'm kind of similar with my minds, where I have kind of a specific target group in mind, but I like not to be restricted to it, at least at the start, like now, while I'm trying to find where I'm specifically going with it. We both have the rough idea with our ideas, but we're leaving it open to kind of move into something, whatever comes up. Like if something does happen to come up that seems, that can be our target, then we will. So you said how obviously your experience is going through the football academy kind of area and having an injury and having struggles with mental health due to that. Can you, from your experience or from like people that you know as well, you can bring them in, can you give us an insight into kind of what the issues are in the football academy process that needs this attention, and why, and kind of how that affects you and why that needs attention?
I would say for me, it was a real pressure cooker. I felt a lot of pressure internally, maybe not so much externally, although of course there is that pressure from the coaches that you need to perform, maybe unconscious pressure from your parents and your peers as well, then you need to perform again. But for me, it was all mostly internal. I think I often find it quite hard to get out my mind. And I'm quite demanding with myself. I think that's one of the biggest, don't know if it's a concern, because it can be useful as well. Obviously it does push you on to achieve great things, but it's when you kind of go overboard that it becomes really detrimental to your mental health. So for me, that's one of the issues I think that needs tackling. We talked as well, you and I, earlier about comparing yourself to others. I said it's pretty much an inescapable truth of the game that you are going to compare yourself to others, because that's really how you gauge your level and where you're at. The coaches are comparing you to the other boys in the academy. Who should we give a deal to? Obviously, coming through the academy, it's known that not every boy in the team is going to get a scholarship contract. I'd say it's probably never ever happened that every boy in the team has got a scholarship contract. There's usually about 3 or 4 that make that transition from 16 to 18 and become scholars. So again, you're comparing yourself to your peers there, and you need to make sure that you're performing better than them to stand a chance of getting a contract. So football is obviously defined as a team sport, but in that circumstance, you could actually argue that it's very individual, because you know that you're not all going to make it together.
Until you reach that top level, you are all fighting to get to that top level, aren't you?
Yeah, exactly. Even there, you're fighting for the contract, aren't you? If I'm against another right winger, I better make sure that I'm getting more goals and assists, because come the end of the season, if we're both coming to the end of our deal, then who's going to get the next one?
Yeah, that's true. I think our minds just in general, because I've spoken quite recently, and obviously we had you do kind of a guest interview or guest video on our Instagram about comparing ourselves to others, and I think our minds work on comparisons, like, you know, just from like back when we were cavemen, Neanderthals, we needed to compare to others to be able to understand what's the best step to take next. Like, you know, this form of hunting didn't work for this person, so I need to do it differently. Or this person's, you know, getting more crops, so I need to copy what they're doing. You know, so our minds work that way. We're designed that way, I think. And that's why it can be useful, like you're saying, in sport and in education, you know, seeing a peer being more successful in their grades may urge you to, you know, try and mimic what they're doing or work a bit harder. The issue is when you become so entranced in that, and kind of, you know, we talk about the definitions of ourselves and my minds, and, you know, when you define yourself by this, you know, want to be better than other people, or to, you know, to be kind of the alpha, or, you know, the top of that hierarchy. That's where the issue comes in, when you're only that, I think, anyway.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it is a bit cliche, but there's plenty of people that will say the only person you should be trying to beat is the person you were yesterday. And I'm not really one for cliches like that, because I do feel they're a bit cheesy and a bit scripted. But there are some truths in them that you can take away. So yeah, obviously, it's again that tipping point when it goes overboard and you're relentlessly focused on trying to beat your peers. It's just not helpful or conducive to a good team atmosphere, or to your mental health. Because if you're not achieving what they are, and you're just getting down, then what's the point? You know, you should be trying to, like the cheesy quote says, you should be trying to improve yourself. There's small victories that you can do there every single day, and even though you might not be able to get a victory over your peer, you can improve on your results from the previous day.
Yeah, and I think because you obviously work in fitness now as well, or you know, you say you kind of work in all sorts of areas.
Yeah.
I think it's also kind of conducive to fitness, isn't it? You comparing yourself to others is common.
Absolutely. Yeah, I was actually thinking about it the other day, and it's strange how the two industries I've worked in are probably the most centered around comparing yourself to others. Like obviously in the fitness industry, it's ridiculously competitive throughout. You know, from the clients that come to the classes, from the trainers, through to the fitness models, through to the competitors. Everyone's competing and comparing themselves to each other. And yeah, I think the fitness industry is probably the industry where it's most prevalent, that people actually engage in that.
I think coming from like a nutrition background as well, I think that because supplements are often pushed as a way to improve the way you look or the way, you know, you function and stuff. And when you really understand the way supplements work, nine times out of 10 you really don't need them. The reason everyone takes them is because they're shown as, you know, you're gonna look better compared to this person now, and that's where the success comes from them often. And I think the fitness industry is, and you tell me if you disagree, but I think the reason it acts that way, and the reason there is all this comparison, same in sport, is that a lot of it is deeply rooted in social media. And you know, nowadays fitness is, you know, I think if you mention fitness, maybe the first thing you would think was a gym, but the second thing you would think would be a fitness model or like a fitness Instagram influencer. You wouldn't. There's not kind of all the other aspects of fitness that comes into mind. It's immediately social media. And social media is the breeding ground of comparisons, isn't it? You know, we pick our best moments and post them for people to see.
Yeah, you're exactly right. I think marketing in general, and particularly in the fitness industry, the emotion behind it is it's to kind of make the person feel like they're not good enough. It kind of plays that mental trick on them to say, I need this supplement, or I need this protein powder to look like this guy or this girl. It really plays on that fear of not being good enough.
Definitely. So kind of going back to the kind of sporting academy, I know you were in a football academy, but I think this is probably commonplace in most sporting kind of academies and up, as we were talking about. Even if you're in the top level, you're still competing with the guy who's after your contract. So do you have any advice for people listening who work with athletes? It could be young athletes or older athletes, but do you have any advice for the coaches or the staff? Maybe, you know, things that they need to educate themselves around, or ways to act?
I think it's hard to make kind of a blanket recommendation on this, because everyone's different. We're all individuals and we have different personalities. So if I was to make a recommendation, it would be to get to know the person that you're dealing with, not intimately, but get to know what makes them tick, get to know what makes them feel down, what makes them feel happy, and kind of devise a plan around that. I think for me particularly, and I've translated this from on the field to off the field, I always need to see progress. And then when I don't see progress, that's when I do get down and I can get in a bit of a rut. And I think everyone in life does want to feel like they're progressing, whether it's in their career, socially, financially. You know, everyone wants to feel like they're getting ahead. And when they do feel that, that's when we feel most motivated. So I would say, if you can figure out what makes someone tick, what makes them feel like they're progressing, what makes them feel like they have a purpose, then that's probably the best way to go about it.
Hmm. So you would say, yeah, that your purpose was to progress, and that like you say, it is probably, I think that's quite common in everyone. I think the fact that we all as people are reading or doing some kind of education or working or everything we do is because we feel that currently the world isn't optimal, like where we're at isn't optimal, and we need to do this thing. Like often the motivation we do things is because we feel like right now isn't what we need and we want something more, whether it's more money or more likes or more followers or to help people in the football academy, like you're saying. The reason you're motivated to do that is because you feel like what it currently isn't correct. And that's kind of, at least I feel like that's maybe what the fitness industry is feeding off of in social media, is that making people feel that where they currently are is incorrect or isn't. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I don't. Yeah, I would agree. I would say that's not useful in either fitness or in football, because obviously, like I mentioned before, you can get in a bit of a negative spiral if you aren't hitting the heights that maybe your peers or the people you look up to are. I remember Wayne Rooney's kind of a similar age to me. He's obviously 6, maybe 7 years older. But when I was in the, as it was then, Centre of Excellence system at Tranmere Rovers, I remember seeing Wayne Rooney score that wonder goal against Arsenal as a 16-year-old. And I kind of had it ingrained in my mind back then, if I'm not doing the same by the time I'm 16, I've failed. I mean, that's a very high bar to aim for. Obviously, Wayne Rooney's gone on to achieve amazing things, one of England's greatest ever players, but that was the sentiment that I felt back then, even as an 11-year-old. So you can imagine kind of coming throughout the academy system, as I was kind of approaching that age, 16 years old, and I wasn't anywhere near really what Wayne Rooney was capable of, because I either hadn't developed or I wasn't as good as Wayne Rooney. That's absolutely fine as well. Like I said, he's one of England's greatest ever players. But yeah, I was miles off, and that really didn't sit right with me. And even when I had my injury, so it was that kind of that really crucial age where you make the transition from scholar to professional. And I'd already had this kind of lingering disappointment that I'd not made it by 16. I'd not played a first team game. I then had to sit out a year from 18 to 19 because of the extent of the injury. And all throughout that year, the only thing was on my mind was I need to get back as soon as possible so I can achieve this goal of becoming a professional footballer. But because the injury was so violent and visceral, I should have taken my time. They'd quoted me 24 months out of the game because it was so bad. They actually said I may never be able to walk unassisted again, so without crutches or without a brace or something. But I kind of pushed all that aside, and the only focus I had in my mind was making it and getting back into the first team. Now, that was an unrealistic goal. Obviously, I should have taken my time and literally learned to walk again before I could run. And I did pay the repercussions for that. My body wasn't ready by the time I came back. Instead of 24 months, I came back in 8, which is pretty good going, but I paid the price. I had a lot of subsequent injuries. I had another knee operation, a hip operation as well I've had after that, and my body, lower body at least, is a bit of a mess. Because I mean, patience isn't one of my virtues. It's not a virtue of an academy footballer, because like I say, they feel this intense pressure that they need to make it at least before 20 years old, or else they kind of, I think there's an unwritten understanding that if you've not made it by 20, you're probably not going to be a top level professional. Whereas we've seen examples to say that that's not the case. You know, you look at Jamie Vardy.
Yeah, that was the first one that came to my mind when you said that.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Jamie Vardy, Ian Wright. If you go back a couple of decades, there's stories that come out, the players who've kind of bumbled around the lower leagues until the 22, 24, and then they go on to achieve great things. Jamie Vardy's on track to be the Premier League top scorer this year. He's won the Premier League with Leicester, so he's not done so bad, has he? But and again, I think that kind of there's kind of a clue there, because I think Jamie Vardy probably doesn't feel that pressure. If you look at him, he's a bit of a jack the lad, and he kind of throws caution to the wind, and it probably didn't faze him that he wasn't a top level professional by the time he was 22. He probably still had it in his mind, right, I'm just going to crack on in the conference or wherever he was at the time, do as well as I can here and see where this takes me.
Yeah, and that can be seen in all walks of life as well. It's the same in like business and things, isn't it? You know, they always say you have all these it's the failures that make you. There's a Michael Jordan quote, I can't remember exactly what it is, but it's like, yeah, the reason I can make so many shots is because I missed 50,000 or something like that.
Right.
I'm butchering it, but that's basically the idea, and it's the same in. And I like kind of what you were saying about Wayne Rooney made me think that it's the people that are the most successful obviously get the most kind of showing on TV and in media and in everything. So the kind of the dream people, like Messi and Rooney and these people who come up from when they're very young and are just amazing, they're given the most limelight. They're the loudest. They're the ones that the academy players such as yourself see and want to be. Yeah. So it's easy to see, if you're comparing yourself to that, it's easy to compare yourself to that person, because why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't you want to be Wayne Rooney? And why wouldn't you want to be Lionel Messi? But that's as you're saying, is something that can cause these issues, and because you're comparing yourself to a 1 in a billion person, and it's almost impossible to achieve what these people achieve.
Yeah, I mean, the odds are already stacked against you to become a professional footballer, whichever level you make it. To become a Premier League footballer, the statistic is 0.012% of people that enter the academy system. Now, that's really slim pickings. So if you want to be Lionel Messi, you can imagine what the stats going to be for that. Like you said, he's the 1 in a billion, probably the greatest player ever. So just think of the amount of people around the world who do want to be a footballer. He's a mercurial talent, the likes of which we've never seen, I don't think, or won't see again for quite a while. So yeah, you're exactly right. You need to set realistic ambitions, I think. If you'd have, I always point to Gary Neville, and I feel like I give him not a bit of stick, it's more credit that I give him. I don't think he was blessed with footballing ability. He knew his limitations, but look what he achieved. He was Man United captain for 10 years, won the Champions League, played for England, won the Premier League numerous times. It just goes to show, he relentlessly worked on improving his game and building his mindset, even though he might have been lacking the skill that Lionel Messi or whichever other Cafu, he wasn't as naturally gifted as Cafu, but he had that work ethic, that mentality, and he went on and had an unbelievable career in the game.
And I imagine he faced a lot of kind of failures and being someone who didn't have this natural ability. He faced these things and still kind of kept working. Which kind of leads me on to my next question, and I think we've touched on it. You've touched on it briefly by mentioning Jamie Vardy and just mentioning then Gary Neville. Do you have not necessarily advice, but do you think there's something that people who are currently in an academy system or in a professional system, maybe listening to this, do you have advice for them on, maybe as MyFootballMind or just as Jason Lampkin, like what kind of mentality you need to be successful in being professional, but also in looking after yourself, like in terms of mental health?
Yeah, the best advice I could give is what we've kind of touched upon already, in the sense that you shouldn't be comparing yourself to others, and kind of give yourself the time to develop and fulfill your potential. I understand, and as I said before, patience is not a virtue that many of us have. especially as an academy footballer, because you feel that pressure to succeed early on. And you do want to be the next Lionel Messi, that mercurial talent that comes through at 16 and goes straight into the first team. The advice I wish I'd listened to growing up, and I think it's advice that quite a lot of people should have taken on board. That really, that you can't. You have to set those realistic goals for yourself, and it got to a point for me where when I wasn't achieving these goals, I would kind of punish myself for not doing it. So my advice would be, it's not a penance if you don't achieve what you want to achieve. And I think this was actually pushed from the coaches at the time at Man U, because if we'd lost the game, they'd actually want to see us really disappointed, because they felt like if we weren't taking it seriously enough. But at that age, football should just be fun. And we were kind of trained to have that mindset where if I don't succeed, I should be sad. And I don't think that really helps our mental health at all, because yes, we might have lost the game, but what did it affect? It wasn't life and death. We weren't playing for points. We weren't going to get relegated. The academy system is just basically friendly games. You do play in an organized league essentially, with schedule, but it's all for fun. But I remember after games, if we were seen to be laughing and we'd lost, we get a bit of a telling off. And I think I still carry that with me now. Like that mentality and the emotions tied to defeat or failure, I feel like I should put on this portrayal or this show to show everyone, look how disappointed I am that I didn't get it. But it just eats me up inside.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's productive at all.
I imagine it's not just Manchester United at the time. Obviously, I think it's almost built into football. Like I was never a football player. I was always a rugby guy. But I think just in football, when I did play football and I was awful at it, I think it is just built into it. There's so much passion in football, isn't there? It is just such a passionate sport that you should be crying and like laughing, and there should be these, that it's almost like it has to be binary. You have to be like, if you win, you're ecstatic, and if you draw or lose, then you're like miserable. You can't. And those people are praised, like the people. And again, it's like, it's extremes in life always are the loudest, and are if you same in like political stuff, like extremists are the ones that get the most media and the most traction, don't they? It's the same in sport. If you're very passionate about scoring a goal, everyone sees that celebration for the next. It's like the Man City goal that won them the league. Everyone. If you're a football fan, that like Aguero moment, don't you? Because that celebration was so huge. It's shown, isn't it? It's mass produced everywhere, even to this day. And I think that's kind of. I forget the original point now, but that's kind of pushed onto us as young sportsmen, that is a way to be. And as you're saying, it can affect you in later life. Like you're saying, you still feel that need to be passionate in whatever response you have.
Well, it's still kind of enforced, and you mentioned this point earlier as well, by social media. You said the loudest voices get the most attention, and that's exactly right. The social media platforms actually have algorithms built into them that seeks out negative emotion, because that's what we react to strongest. So when we see something we don't like, we're more likely to engage, and that's obviously good for them because they get more figures, more views. So they're actually filtering stuff into your feed that makes you react in that volatile way. So it's being enforced all around us. It's inescapable, really.
So I think social media is such a difficult thing because it seems there's no correct, at least not that I've seen, there's no correct way to treat social media. It seems no matter which way you attempt, there's a lot of people out there trying to be positive in social media and trying to make an influence, but it seems a very difficult thing to navigate, and to find the people who are giving the right information. And it is just a difficult thing, and it's actually something that I'm not going to say during this interview, but there's something that MyFootballMinds are working on to help people with that in the future, and I'll tell you about it after the recording. But that should hopefully help people with that. But yeah, I'm kind of conscious of time, so I'm gonna end it here. Can you, for the people listening, tell people where they can find you and MyFootballMind, and so any websites or social media tags?
Yep, perfect. So they can find me obviously on social media as well, JS Lampkin on Instagram. If you want to connect, send me any questions or just have a chat, I'm more than happy to do that. MyFootballMind at MyFootballMind on Instagram as well, and we'd love to hear from you as well. If you want to go onto the website for MyFootballMind, literally just type that in and that will pop up on your search bar. And you can find me on any platform really, LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, whatever you want. Let's connect and let's have a chat.
Cool. I will be putting the tags below everything where I post these clips or the whole interviews, so people can see them down there. And thank you, Jason.
Cheers, George. Thank you, mate.
Cool. Bye, everyone.